My name is Emily Dawson, and I've always believed that if you give enough love, time, money, eventually people would notice, appreciate you, respect you. But on the day I turned 30, that illusion shattered like glass in my own backyard. Picture this. I'd spent the morning hanging string lights, baking lemon bars from scratch, setting out chairs for my modest birthday gathering, and then my younger sister Ava arrived, late as usual in a sparkling red Mercedes. Our mother's words that followed. "Why can't you just be happy for your sister?" That sentence changed everything. Stick around, because what started as a birthday party turned into a full-blown family reckoning. And I was done being the quiet one. I used to think family tension was something you tucked away behind polite smiles and overly sweet birthday cake. That was before I turned 30. The sun had barely climbed past the neighbor's rooftop, and already I was up to my elbows in frosting. I'd chosen yellow for optimism, not realizing the irony until later. The backyard of my parents' house in Milwaukee looked almost charming. Balloons tied to the fence posts, hand-picked wildflowers in mason jars on every table. I did it all myself. My mother said not to go overboard, but this was my only celebration of the year. I wanted it to feel special. By noon, relatives trickled in with casserole dishes and lukewarm hugs. My father, Dale, manned the grill with his signature distracted calm. My mother, Marion, flitted around making sure Ava's favorite pasta salad had enough lemon zest. Not that Ava had arrived yet. I was smoothing out creases in the tablecloth when I heard it engine purring like a show-off's purr. The kind you feel in your teeth. The shiny red Mercedes rolled into the driveway like it owned the place. Ava stepped out, heels clicking against the pavement, hair styled in those loose waves that probably cost a small fortune. She looked expensive. "Hey, Em," she sang, waltzing through the gate with a white gift bag swinging on her wrist. "Happy third tie," I blinked. "Is that your car?" Her smile curled. "Isn't she gorgeous? Just picked her up this morning." Before I could even process that, Mom swooped in like a heat-seeking missile. "Oh, Ava, it's beautiful, just beautiful. What a smart investment." She clutched Ava's arm as though she'd brought the Messiah, not a luxury car. "Where'd you get the money?" I asked, trying not to sound like the IRS. Ava shrugged, laughing. "Just a little financing magic. You only live once, right?" That's when it happened. Mom turned to me, jaw tightening. "Why can't you just be happy for your sister for once? It's her success. Don't make today about you." The air shifted. You know when a storm's about to break and everything goes too still. That. I stood there in my pale yellow dress, a paper plate of deviled eggs in one hand, and watched as the guests politely averted their eyes. No one said a word, not even Dad. "Mom, I was just..." "No, every time Ava does something exciting, you find a way to drag her down. Let her enjoy it." I laughed, too stunned not to. "Let her enjoy it. I decorated this backyard since 7 this morning. I made her favorite cake, and I'm the one ruining the mood." "You're making a scene," Mom hissed, smoothing her blouse like I'd wrinkled the whole day. Ava, of course, said nothing, just sipped her iced tea and smiled like a pageant queen. Something inside me clenched, not in anger, in recognition. I'd seen this play before, Ava the star, me the shadow backstage holding the curtain. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the Mercedes. Maybe it was the way Mom looked at her, like Ava invented joy. Or maybe I was just tired. So deeply, bone-crushingly tired of working hard, doing everything right and still feeling invisible. The backyard party continued, music playing over speakers I'd set up, kids running with juice boxes, my own birthday cake untouched on the table. But I excused myself quietly and went upstairs to the guest room, the one I slept in every time I visited, the one Ava had never touched. I shut the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed. Outside, they laughed without me. Inside, something was beginning to shift. I didn't mean to cry. But there I was, alone in that quiet guest room, staring at the faded wallpaper roses, blinking back tears that had nothing to do with the present moment and everything to do with the years that led to it. Outside, laughter floated through the open window. I could almost taste the buttercream frosting in the air. I wondered if they'd started slicing the cake yet, probably without me. I lay back on the bed, my bed, growing up until Ava came along. It was funny how memory works. You think you've let go of certain things, until one sharp moment snaps you back to the beginning. I was 9 when I first noticed it. Ava was 5, twirling in the middle of the living room in a sparkly purple leotard our mom had custom made for her dance recital. She looked like a glittery jelly bean. Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen, drying dishes, the sleeves of my thrift store hoodie pulled down over my hands to hide the holes. Dad had just lost his job at the time. Things were tight. Mom kept saying we had to make sacrifices. I assumed that meant all of us, but not Ava. She got rhinestones and ruffles. I got a lecture about wasting water when I took a hot shower after school. At 13, I started babysitting for the neighbors every weekend so I could afford school lunches that weren't just peanut butter on stale bread. At 16, I worked at the grocery store downtown, register 4, next to the drafty freezer aisle. Every paycheck went into an envelope for family needs. I never questioned it. And yet Ava, she was the one praised for finding her voice every time she threw a tantrum in public. When she failed algebra 3 times in high school, Dad paid for private tutoring and blamed the school system. When I brought home straight A's, they said, "Well, that's expected from you, Em. You're the responsible one." Responsible. That word became a leash around my neck. I once overheard Mom bragging to her bridge club that Ava had an artist's soul. What did I have? Apparently, just a knack for picking up the pieces. It wasn't even about jealousy. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted fairness, balance, maybe a thank you once in a while. I closed my eyes, remembering the day I gave up a scholarship to stay close to home and help out when Dad had heart surgery. I drove Ava to her practices. I took night classes instead of going away to college. I paid for groceries and filled Mom's gas tank more times than I could count. But Ava, she left for California with barely a wave goodbye, returned 2 years later with a vague certificate in event planning and an Instagram full of beaches and brunches. And still, they looked at her like she hung the stars. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A birthday message from my coworker, Janelle. "Hope you're getting spoiled today. You deserve it, girl." Spoiled. I couldn't help but laugh. If only she knew. I scrolled absently just to distract myself. Photos from the party already popping up online. Ava's smiling face next to her new car. Caption: "Celebrating my amazing sister on her big 3-0. So proud of this girl, family first, I nearly dropped the phone." Was it sarcasm? No, that would have required self-awareness. Family first. I let that settle in my chest, heavy as a stone. Because here's what family had meant for me: quiet sacrifice, predictable reliability, and above all, invisibility. I glanced over at the stack of papers I'd brought in my tote bag: mortgage statements, tax receipts, bills I'd paid for this very house. Payments I made to help keep my parents afloat after Dad's second surgery. Rent they never charged Ava. All here in black and white. They called Ava generous because she once sent them a bouquet on their anniversary. But I'd paid off their late electric bill 2 Christmases ago without a word. That wasn't generosity. That was expected. And maybe, I thought, as I sat back up and looked out at the flickering lights below, maybe that's the real problem. They expect me to be invisible, to just keep giving. I'm not sure how long I stayed in that room, but when I finally stood, my knees cracked like old floorboards. I looked at myself in the mirror above the dresser, the same one I used to stand in front of before school dances I never actually attended. I looked tired, but I also looked done. Maybe not angry yet, but close. The sun was beginning to set now, golden light stretching across the backyard like a soft apology, the kind no one would offer me. I took one last breath before opening the door, because I knew something now, something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before today. This wasn't about Ava's car. It was about years of silence, of swallowing my hurt because it wasn't convenient for them, and if no one else was going to recognize what I'd given. Maybe it was time I started recognizing it for myself. The party wound down the way most of our family gatherings did, plenty of leftovers, a few half-hearted hugs, and the clink of dishes I would eventually end up cleaning. I slipped away before the final goodbyes, unnoticed as usual, and climbed back into the quiet of my childhood room. The air inside felt thinner, the walls holding more memories than space. I sat cross-legged on the carpet, the glow of my laptop screen lighting my face in the dim room. It was instinct now. Every time I felt like I might explode from everything I couldn't say, I turned to the screen, to evidence, to numbers, to the truths they could no longer deny, at least not to themselves. Beside me on the floor was a neatly organized folder. It contained copies of the last 36 mortgage payments. My name was on every one of them. Technically, it was their house. But it had been my bank account keeping the lights on, my paychecks funding every patch of roof and clogged pipe. I should have been proud, but pride had no room in this kind of loneliness. I opened Ava's Instagram. The most recent post had racked up nearly 300 likes in the past hour. A shot of her standing beside the red Mercedes, head tilted like a magazine ad. My birthday balloons floated in the background, photobombing the moment like confused party guests. Caption: grateful for new beginnings and the kind of glow-up you can't buy, though some leather seats help. I scrolled further. One photo after another, Cabo San Lucas with mimosas in hand, matching swimsuits with friends at a rooftop pool, designer bags, spa days, pop-up picnics with catered sushi. She even tagged a private helicopter tour company in one post, taken above Napa Valley. That trip had been just last month. The only thing more breathtaking than her vacation shots was the audacity. I switched tabs and opened my budgeting spreadsheet. My own life laid out in categories and color-coded stress. Auto pay for their mortgage, $1,242 monthly. Average grocery contributions, $300. Medical expenses covered after mom's knee injury, $2,400 last fall. Ava once cried over a broken nail on Thanksgiving. I cried when I realized I'd never actually lived alone, not because I didn't want to, but because someone always needed me more. Scrolling her feed, the resentment didn't build slowly this time. It came fast, uninvited, like a dam cracking open all at once. She had everything. Not just the things money bought, but the freedom to want without guilt, to take without asking, to show up late and still be applauded. And somehow, I was always the one left wondering if I was being too dramatic. I clicked on another post. A bathroom mirror selfie from a luxury hotel. Ava D. Manifested this life. Don't let anyone tell you you don't deserve the soft things. I stared at that caption for a long time. The soft things. I'd once cried quietly into a rough hand towel after skipping dinner so mom and dad could buy Ava a prom dress. What had I manifested? A perfectly detailed credit history and premature stress wrinkles. A familiar ache welled in my chest, but it felt different now. Less like sadness, more like focus. Because for all her curated captions and highlight reels, Ava never once posted about the sister who lent her $1,000 when her last lease went south, or the one who took a week off work to help pack her apartment, or paid for her dental work that one year she didn't have insurance. No, Ava only posted what sparkled. The reality didn't fit her aesthetic, and suddenly I was done letting the narrative belong to someone else. I minimized the window and opened my email. My fingers hesitated above the keyboard, not because I wasn't sure what to do, but because this moment had been years in the making and I wanted to feel it, really feel it. Then I began typing to the bank. Subject: mortgage auto payment cancellation request. I kept it brief, polite, professional. But each keystroke felt like a stone lifted from my chest. I scheduled the email to send first thing Monday morning. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but adrenaline. The kind that follows just after you realize you're no longer waiting for someone else to give you permission. Outside, the party had ended. The house was dark. Inside, I was finally beginning to see what needed to come next. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel sorry. I felt ready. The next morning was crisp and still. The kind of Midwest summer air that held a hint of cool just before the heat took over. I woke early, though I hadn't really slept, just turned the night over in my head like a coin I couldn't quite catch. Downstairs, the house was quiet. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, the old linoleum cool underfoot. My mother stood at the stove, back straight as she flipped pancakes like a soldier on patrol. Dad was already at the table, skimming the sports section with his coffee half finished. Neither looked up. "Morning," I said softly. Mom didn't turn. "Morning, sweetheart, coffee," I nodded. She poured without asking how I liked it, still remembered. Black just like Dad's. I took my seat at the table across from him. The chair creaked. He gave a half smile, eyes still on the page. "Sleep okay?" I could have said 1,000 things, but I simply murmured, "Fine." The scent of maple syrup and batter filled the room, familiar, comforting, but I wasn't here for comfort. "So," I said, keeping my voice light, "Ava's car is something." Dad chuckled. "Yeah, shiny enough to signal the space station." Mom set a stack of pancakes in front of him. "She works hard, she deserves something nice." I sipped my coffee, steadying myself. "Does she?" That stopped her. She turned slowly, spatula in hand. Excuse me. I just mean, I shrugged, pretending to be casual. She's only had 2 consistent jobs in 5 years. Where's the money really coming from? Dad looked up then. For a moment, he didn't blink. Emily, Mom warned. Not now. No, it's a genuine question, I said, eyes still on Dad. Because I've been reviewing my own finances and it struck me how much I've contributed around here. Mortgage, groceries, bills. It's a lot. And I'm happy to help. But sometimes I wonder if the giving is evenly distributed. Silence. Mom went back to the stove with a clatter. You've always been responsible. That's not Ava's fault. I know, I said softly, but it seems like being responsible has made me invisible. Dad set down his paper, folding it slowly. His eyes met mine, not angry, not defensive, just tired. You've done a lot, Em, I see that. My breath caught. You do, I asked, surprised by the admission. He nodded, rubbing his chin. Of course I do, we just don't always say it right. Don't say it at all, actually, I said, half smiling, trying to keep it from sounding bitter. Mom turned around, arms crossed. This is your birthday weekend, why are we doing this now? Because it's never a good time, I said, my voice steady, and I'm tired of pretending it doesn't hurt. She opened her mouth, ready to strike, but Dad spoke first. She's right. You could have heard the floor sigh. Mom blinked. Dale, he raised a hand, firm. Marion, she's right, we've leaned on her a lot. And maybe we haven't said thank you enough. That was all I'd wanted, for someone to acknowledge it, that I existed, that my effort wasn't invisible. Ava's footsteps pounded down the stairs. She entered the kitchen mid-hair flip, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that didn't belong to her, probably one of mine, judging by the bleach stain on the sleeve. Who used the last of the good coffee creamer? She said, opening the fridge like it owed her money. We all watched her. Oblivious, she poured herself juice and flopped into the seat beside me. What's up? No one answered. The room felt different now, like a curtain had been drawn back just a little. Nothing, I said, quietly finishing my coffee. Just getting some clarity. Dad's gaze lingered on me for a second longer before he picked up his fork. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away. And Mom, she turned back to the stove a little slower than before. A crack in the frame, small, barely visible. But I saw it. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe they did too. It wasn't planned. I hadn't marched out with a speech rehearsed or fists clenched. I was just going to the garage to grab my duffel bag, thinking I might leave early. Head back to my place, my quiet routine. But there she was, Ava, bent over the trunk of her new car, placing shopping bags inside as if they weighed nothing. Designer logos peeked from the sides. Her red heels, yes, she'd worn heels into the garage, clicked like punctuation on concrete. She didn't see me at first. I watched her for a second, as ridiculous as that sounds. Something about her so sure of herself, so casual in this curated little life. Then I cleared my throat. She glanced over her shoulder. Oh, hey. I was just grabbing my bag, I said. She smiled, flipping her hair back. Well, I'm headed out. Brunch with Lauren, bottomless mimosas. You should come. I raised an eyebrow. Do you even remember whose birthday it was yesterday? She blinked, like the question was confusing. I threw a party for you, didn't I? She said, laughing. Or, well, Mom did. I just made it fun. My jaw tightened. You showed up late, flaunted a car no one asked about, and spent the night posing for pictures. She scoffed. Wow, you're really doing this. I took a breath. Yes, I am. She leaned against the car like it was an old friend. Look, if this is about the car. It's not about the car, I snapped. It's about every year, every birthday, every sacrifice. You act like you're starring in some Instagram reel while I'm in the background holding everything up. Ava rolled her eyes. This again. Yes, I said, louder now. This again because it hasn't changed. I've been covering Mom and Dad's mortgage for years. I've skipped vacations, worked overtime, helped you move, paid for your dentist last year, and you don't even say thank you. You don't even notice. She pushed off the car, arms crossed. Okay, let's get one thing straight. No one asked you to do all that. You chose to. That landed like a slap. I chose to, I repeated, stunned. What choice did I have, Ava? They were drowning. You were off finding yourself in Santa Monica and sending home bills like postcards. She narrowed her eyes. Oh, so now you're a martyr. Saint Emily. Guess what? Some of us don't want to spend our lives in spreadsheets and control freak routines. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Is that what you think this is? I asked. Control, she shrugged. You act like you're better than everyone because you're organized and broke from helping people who didn't even ask. Broke, that word echoed. I wasn't broke. I was tired. And if I'd spent less on other people, I wouldn't be anywhere near broke. But I didn't even want to argue the math. You've never once asked why I stayed here, I said quietly. Why I gave up grad school. Why I never moved out of state. Why I never complained when Mom and Dad leaned on me. Because you like it, she said flatly. You like being the dependable one, makes you feel important. I stared at her. You know what I think, I said, stepping closer. You've built this life where no one tells you the truth, and I was the one person who did once. You didn't like it then, and you don't like it now. So you rewrote the story, made me the uptight sister while you played misunderstood. Ava laughed, not the real kind, the kind that tries to make a bruise look like blush. You sound insane, she said. Really, all this over a car and some old bills? My hands were shaking now. It's not about the car, I whispered. It's about the fact that you've never once seen me, not really. I've been holding up this family like scaffolding and you've been swinging from the chandelier. She looked away. For a second, just a blink, her jaw shifted. I didn't ask for any of that, she mumbled. No, I said, my voice steady. But you never told them to stop either. The garage went still. I picked up my bag from the shelf, slinging it over my shoulder. You know what? Don't worry, I'm done now. The scaffolding's coming down. I turned to go, and behind me the garage door slammed shut with a finality that felt almost symbolic. She didn't follow, and I didn't look back. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not Mom, not Dad, definitely not Ava. There was something sacred in keeping it to myself, like if I said it out loud, they'd find a way to shame me into changing my mind. They always did. But this time, I didn't ask. I acted. By Sunday night, the storm inside me had settled into something eerily calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've already lost the thing you were afraid to break. I sat at the small desk in the corner of the guest room, the one I'd once used to do middle school math worksheets. My laptop glowed in the soft lamplight as I opened the bank portal. It was a screen I knew by heart, 3 years of recurring payments always on time. My name, their address, monthly withdrawal like clockwork. I hovered my mouse over the auto pay settings. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revenge. It was math, pure and simple. I clicked cancel. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" I clicked yes. A second confirmation popped up. "This will immediately halt all scheduled transactions to this account." Good, I clicked again, and just like that, the safety net I'd been weaving beneath them unraveled. I leaned back in the chair, the air in the room somehow thinner. My palms were damp, my heart pounding, but not in fear, in anticipation. Because now, for the first time in years, I had money I didn't owe anyone. I opened a new tab, travel sites, deals, last-minute flights. It started as a joke. I typed in Maui. Not because I was serious, at least, not yet. Just to see. Just to imagine what it would be like to book something for myself that didn't involve spreadsheets or guilt. But then I saw it. A round-trip ticket to Lahaina. 2 weeks from now. Affordable, barely, but doable. My mouse hovered again. There was a strange sense of possibility curling inside my chest. I didn't need permission. I didn't need to justify it with "I need to recharge so I can help everyone better." I just needed to go. Click. The booking confirmation slid into my inbox. My eyes blurred as I stared at it. "You're going to Maui." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt surreal. Like someone else had done it, but it was me. Emily. The girl who used to budget her tips from waitressing just to buy Christmas gifts for people who forgot to wrap hers. The one who stayed home during spring break senior year so Ava could have spending money in Miami. I was going. For no reason other than I wanted to. I booked a modest hotel near the beach. Nothing flashy, but it had windows that opened to the ocean and a hammock between 2 palms. I imagined what it would feel like to wake up without an alarm. To walk barefoot in the sand without calculating which bill was next. To laugh with no one asking for anything in return. And maybe, somewhere in that island quiet, I'd find the version of myself I'd hidden away years ago, the one who didn't live for other people's comfort. I glanced at the digital clock. Almost midnight. I sent one more email before I shut the laptop. Not to my family, not to explain, to my manager. Subject, PTO request effective immediately. High bait. I know this is short notice, but I need some time. 2 weeks, personal. I've covered all deadlines and prepped for handover. I've attached the documents. Thank you for understanding. Emily, she would understand. Bate had once told me during a performance review, "You're the type of person people lean on too hard, too often." Maybe I was. But not anymore. I packed lightly the next morning, just enough for sun and solitude. I left the folder of mortgage statements in the drawer. I wouldn't need them where I was going. On the way out, I passed Mom in the hallway. She was on the phone, pacing, furrowed brow and worried tone. I could guess why. The mortgage alerts hadn't hit yet, but they would soon. "Where are you going?" she asked, eyeing the duffel bag. "Just taking some time for myself," I said. She blinked. "Now." "Yes." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but something stopped her. Maybe the look on my face. Maybe the fact that deep down she knew I wasn't asking anymore. I smiled politely. "Tell Dad I'll call soon." I stepped outside. The sun hit my face like a promise. The air smelled like summer and decisions I didn't need to explain. For once, I wasn't leaving behind responsibility. I was leaving behind permission. The first thing I noticed when I stepped off the plane wasn't the heat. It was the light. Golden and full-bodied. Like the sun wasn't just warming the island, but offering some kind of quiet benediction. It felt like arriving in a painting someone else had spent years finishing. And I had just stepped into the final stroke. Maui was more beautiful than I imagined. Lahaina, in particular, felt like a slow breath after a long silence. The streets were lined with art galleries and handmade jewelry stalls, the breeze always carrying some mix of sea salt and hibiscus. My hotel wasn't luxurious, but it was honest. Whitewashed walls, creaky screen door, and a balcony that opened to the endless blue. I hadn't worn my watch since landing. Time worked differently here. The first 2 days, I didn't do much. Just walked barefoot across the shore, letting the tide pull at my ankles like it was trying to coax something out of me. I read a little. I slept without guilt. And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch when my phone buzzed. I didn't even check it. On the third morning, I signed up for a beginner's snorkeling tour. Not because I wanted the excursion. Honestly, the idea of masks and fish and awkward flippers felt mildly absurd, but because I wanted to say yes to something. The boat was small and easygoing, with just 8 of us on board. There was a couple from Toronto, 2 college roommates on a graduation trip, and a mother-daughter duo from Boise. And then there was Scott. He was the instructor. Tall, sunburned in patches, and clearly someone who'd long ago stopped caring about matching socks. He wore his hair in a messy ponytail and introduced himself with a grin that seemed permanently lopsided. "Emily," he said when I boarded, reading the clipboard. "You don't strike me as a snorkeling type." I raised a brow. "That obvious?" He handed me a pair of flippers. "That honest, I like it." I smiled, unsure if he was charming or just casually unfiltered. The water was warm, the gear ridiculous, and the first time I inhaled through the snorkel, I nearly choked. But Scott was patient and funny. "You're not drowning," he said, guiding me through it. "You're just panicking very gracefully." "Thanks," I muttered. "I do try to be elegant in my existential crises," he laughed. "You on vacation or on the run?" I glanced at him. "Can it be both?" He nodded slowly, the smile fading into something gentler. "Actually, yeah, it can." Underwater, everything slowed. The noise of the world disappeared, just coral and shadow and flickers of fish that darted like secrets through the reef. It wasn't peaceful, not exactly, but it was quiet. In the way truth is quiet when you stop trying to control it. Back on the boat, we shared pineapple slices and stories. Well, they did, I mostly listened, until Scott sat beside me during the ride back. "So," he said, "what brought you here?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "I was tired of carrying things." "Luggage," he joked. "People," I said. He didn't laugh this time. "Ah, I paid my parents' mortgage for 3 years," I admitted, surprised at my own openness. "And they never thanked me, not once. That's heavy." I didn't realize how heavy until I stopped. Scott nodded thoughtfully. "It's funny how we don't feel the weight until we finally set it down." I looked out at the ocean, endless and undemanding. "Do you always sound like a fortune cookie?" I asked. He chuckled. "Only with tourists who clearly need one." I smiled. For the first time in weeks, maybe longer, I felt seen but not needed. There was no transaction here, just 2 people talking, floating on water, and maybe something else. When we docked, he helped me off the boat and handed me my sandals. "Come by tomorrow," he said casually. "We're doing a sunset dive. No flippers, just floating and watching the sky go gold. Less panic, more therapy." "I'll think about it." "No pressure. But if you do come, bring a snack. I'll bring the story." I nodded, then walked away slowly, the sand already cooling beneath my feet. Back in my room, I opened the sliding door and sat on the balcony. The sky was lavender now, the sun dipping low. And for once, I didn't feel like I needed to check my inbox or track any payment or prove my worth to anyone. Scott's words echoed. You don't feel the weight until you finally set it down. He was right. And here, with the ocean as witness, I was beginning to let go. The ocean had a way of silencing the world, or maybe it just gave you permission to ignore it. For days, that's what I'd done. Sunrise to sunset, I let the waves carry away the noise. I swam, I napped. I read books I'd bought 3 summers ago and never opened. I flirted with the idea of smiling for no reason. And then on the 5th morning, my phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. A sequence so relentless it felt like someone shaking me by the shoulders. I rolled over on the hammock, squinting at the screen. 11 missed calls, 12 messages, group chat, family thread. I hadn't opened that one in months, and I shouldn't have, but I did. Mom, Emily, the mortgage didn't go through. Did your bank mess something up? Mom, please call me. This is serious. Dad, we're getting late notices. What happened? Mom, Ava says she saw you cancel something. Emily, we need to talk. Mom, I'm not kidding. This is becoming a real problem. And then finally, Ava, wow, I guess your big stand came with consequences. Congrats. I stared at the screen, the breeze still playing with my hair like it didn't realize the world had just tilted again. Consequences. The word sat heavy, not because I regretted anything, but because it was only now becoming real to them. I scrolled through the flurry of alerts. Missed calls, voicemails. A new one from Dad. Look, I don't know what's going on, but if this is about that argument, can we please talk? We're behind on everything now, and your mother's panicking. I locked the screen. My fingers hovered uncertain, not because I felt guilty, but because the urge to fix things was reflexive, like an old injury aching in the cold. But I didn't owe them repair. I owed myself peace. Still, I couldn't stop my thoughts from racing. Were they really panicking? Had the bank started collection notices already? Given them years to plan, to prepare. Had they really done nothing? I turned the phone off. That afternoon, I went on the sunset dive Scott had mentioned. No gear, just floating on the edge of the reef, faces tilted toward the sky as it melted from gold to fire. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't have to. Later, as we sat on the beach drying off, he passed me a bottle of water and a protein bar. You okay? I didn't lie. My family's falling apart. They think I broke it. Did you? I looked at him. No, I said, but I stopped holding it together. He nodded slowly, poking at the sand with a stick. You ever notice how people get angry when you stop doing their emotional labor? That's exactly what this is, I whispered. They'll survive or they won't, but that's not your responsibility. He said it so plainly, like it was just weather. I closed my eyes and leaned back on my elbows. It's so weird. I thought doing everything for them would earn something. Love. Respect, stability. Scott tossed a pebble into the waves. You were making payments on a house that didn't have a foundation. My throat tightened. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the silence do what it does best, hold space for what words can't. That night in bed, I turned my phone back on just long enough to see that the group chat had gone quiet. No one had asked if I was okay. No one had said, we miss you. Only bills, accusations, blame. I powered it down again. Some storms don't end with thunder. Some end with silence. But that silence, it wasn't empty. It was mine, and I was learning to live inside it. I came back quietly. No airport pickup. No welcome home dinner. No texts asking when my flight landed. Just the familiar churn of airplane wheels touching down and the cold reality of Milwaukee air greeting my sun-warmed skin. It was late September now. The air here had changed, brisker, brittle at the edges. The Midwest liked to remind you that joy was seasonal. So was warmth. My apartment was just as I'd left it. A neat one-bedroom over a bakery that smelled of cinnamon and flour before dawn. I dropped my suitcase and stood in the center of the living room, letting the silence sink in. I could have gone to the grocery store, could have checked the mail or unpacked or even, God help me, called my parents. But instead, I grabbed my keys, pulled on an old sweatshirt, and drove west. Grandma Edith was buried in a cemetery off a county road lined with oak trees, the kind that turned rust orange and crimson like they were trying to apologize for summer leaving. I parked beneath one of those trees, the engine ticking in the chill. Her grave was tucked beneath a lilac bush. Simple headstone. No dates etched in gold. Just her name and the words she used to say to me when I was little. Do it because it's right, not because they'll thank you. She died when I was 20. A quiet stroke, a quiet funeral. Fewer flowers than she deserved. I hadn't been back in a while. Now I knelt down beside her and let the silence fill the space between us. Hi, Grandma, I whispered. I did it. I really did it. The breeze rustled the leaves above like she might be listening. I sat back on the damp grass, hugging my knees. They're upset. Everyone's upset. The payments stopped and now it's all my fault. Ava's quiet, which is almost worse than her yelling. I paused. But I think I needed it. Maui. I needed to remember what it feels like to live without flinching, without feeling like I'm only as good as the next thing I fix. A memory rose, uninvited but welcome. I was 17, crying in the kitchen because Mom had forgotten to mail my college application. Ava was having a meltdown over a lost earring and the house was chaos. I'd stormed outside, phone clutched in my hand, and called Grandma. "Do you want them to love you more?" she'd said gently, "or do you want to love yourself better?" At the time, I hadn't understood the difference. Now I did. I traced the edge of her headstone with my fingers. "I didn't leave them, I just stopped holding all the weight, and I don't think they know who I am without the weight." A single leaf fluttered down beside me. I smiled. "Maybe I don't either, not yet." I stayed until the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the grass. The air bit a little sharper, like the day was nudging me home. As I stood to go, I touched the stone once more. "Thank you," I whispered, "for seeing me when no one else did." Driving back, I passed by my parents' house. The lawn looked unkempt, brown patches creeping along the edges, and then I saw them, 2 white plastic signs stuck in the ground like gravestones. "For sale." I didn't pull over, didn't text, didn't ask questions. They knew where to find me if they wanted to talk, but they hadn't. Not yet, and for once I didn't rush to fill that space. That night I curled up on my couch with a cup of tea and didn't check my phone. I wrapped myself in a blanket I'd bought in Lahaina, soft, ocean-colored, still faintly smelling of salt. I thought of Grandma again, of her hands, warm and strong, braiding my hair as she told stories about the kind of woman no one expects to rise until she already has. I was beginning to think that woman might be me. The signs didn't come down. I drove past the house twice more that week, once out of curiosity, the second time out of something closer to disbelief. Both times, the FOR sale posts still stood like silent admissions in the yard. The blinds in the living room were drawn tight. Mom used to open them every morning to let the light in. Now, it seemed, the light wasn't welcome. I didn't stop, and I didn't reach out. The group chat buzzed again midweek. Desperate, erratic. "Mom, Emily, we're meeting with a realtor on Friday. This is serious. Dad, can we please talk? It's gone too far. Mom, I know you're seeing these messages." Then nothing, then more. "Mom, we raised you better than this." Ava won't respond either. "I don't know what's happening to this family." "Dad, your mother's crying." I don't know what else to say. I stared at my screen. Part of me wanted to reply, to soften it, to explain that it wasn't vengeance, just self-preservation. But I didn't type a single word, because they weren't actually asking to understand. They were asking me to return to the role, the reliable one, the financial fallback, the daughter whose silence always meant consent. But I'd canceled that contract the day I clicked stop payment. And silence now, it meant something new. It meant, "I see what you're doing, and I'm not stepping in." I spent that week in a rhythm foreign to me. Work, rest, long walks after dinner. My meals were warm. My thoughts were slower. I wasn't exhausted every minute of the day. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living in crisis mode. One evening, I walked to the bookstore near my place. I bought a novel just because the cover was pretty. I sat in the corner with tea and read for hours, my phone off. No one died. No one collapsed. The world didn't end because I missed a text. That revelation hit me harder than the silence ever could. They were learning now what I had carried quietly for years. Real responsibility has weight. And when the carrier leaves, the rest feel gravity for the first time. I knew what they thought, that I was being cold, cruel even, that I was punishing them. But I wasn't. I was stepping back so they could finally step up or fall and learn how to stand. Ava hadn't texted me directly since that day in the garage. Not even a sarcastic one-liner. Just nothing. I found myself checking for her name more than I wanted to admit. Part of me, some quiet echo of childhood, still hoped she'd break the silence first. But she didn't. And neither did I on Friday morning. I passed the house one more time. A car I didn't recognize was parked out front. A woman in a blazer stood beside the FOR sale sign, clipboard in hand. I watched from my car for a moment. Mom opened the door. She looked older, smaller. Dad stood behind her, hands in his pockets. Ava was nowhere in sight. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty. What I felt was distance, like I was watching the final scene of a show I'd once starred in long before the script changed. I drove on, Back at my apartment, I made dinner, roasted vegetables, a glass of wine, music playing softly. I was halfway through eating when my phone buzzed again. Another message. From Ava. Ava, I got a job. I'm ready to contribute. Please help them. I read it twice. 3 times. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. It was different. And suddenly, the silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like space. Space where something new might finally grow. But not on my terms alone. Not anymore. I didn't answer Ava right away. I made her wait. Not out of malice, but intention. I needed to make sure she meant it, not just another apology wrapped in panic. Not another performance. 3 days later, I replied with one sentence. Emily, only if we do this my way. She replied 2 hours later. Ava, tell me the rules. I sat at my laptop and drafted a message like it was a contract. Because in a way, it was. I laid it all out. All financial accounts for Mom and Dad would be monitored transparently. Ava would contribute monthly, consistently. No more late-night calls asking for just a little help this once. And most importantly, I would not be the safety net anymore. I'd help, not hold. I hit send. That evening, she sent back a photo of her first pay stub. No filters, no sparkly captions. Just proof. Weeks passed, and slowly, very slowly, the temperature began to shift. Mom messaged once. Thank you for helping. Ava's doing better. I know it's because you held the line. That might have been the closest thing to an apology I would ever get from her. And honestly, it was enough. Then one Sunday, Dad called. Dinner, he asked. Something small, no speeches. I hesitated, then agreed. They made a roast. Ava brought a salad store-bought, but hey, it was something. We sat at the kitchen table where so many arguments had once simmered, now noticeably quieter. There was tension, of course, but also space. Everyone was aware of the fault lines now, and no one pretended they weren't there. Midway through dinner, Ava cleared her throat. I've been kind of a brat. I looked up. Her eyes weren't defiant. They weren't flippant. They were honest. She fiddled with her fork. I didn't know how to be anything else. You always caught the blame, so I never had to. Mom started to speak, but Ava held up her hand. No, let me say it. You were right, Emily. You always were. About the car, about the way we leaned on you. I couldn't speak, not yet. Ava swallowed. I thought if I looked shiny enough, no one would notice how little I had underneath. There it was, the thing I'd waited half a lifetime to hear. Truth. Raw, unpolished, real. I'm trying, she added, almost in a whisper. I want to earn things now, not just expect them. Silence followed, but not the tense kind. The kind that lets words settle in like stones on still water. Dad raised his glass. To hard truths and second chances. I raised mine, and something inside me lifted, not because everything was fixed, but because something had shifted. The next day, I got a text from Ava. Ava, thank you for not replying that night. If you had, I wouldn't have figured out how to stand up. I didn't reply. She didn't need me to. That weekend, I returned home to my apartment and watered the little fern I'd bought after Maui. It was thriving now, lush, green, impossible to ignore. Kind of like me. I curled up on the couch, pulled out my journal, and wrote one sentence across the top of the page. Doing everything for everyone won't make them love you more. Grandma knew. Now I did too. And maybe, just maybe, they were starting to understand it as well. What would you do if standing up for yourself meant everything around you fell apart? Would you keep holding it all together? Or would you finally choose yourself? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away long enough for people to realize what they lost. And sometimes what they gain is someone stronger than they ever imagined.